Today we are doing INF1520, our very first topic for the module. But I do understand that you guys have an assignment coming up, the assessment 4. So with the time that we have today, I want us to also do the topic of interaction design, which is part of your assessment 4. So I hope we can get through everything in this time that we have. Okay. Someone is asking, can I have the class link? Okay. Let me just find it and post it in the chat. I thought everyone had the class link. As long as they are on the Teams chat, then they should be able to join. Okay, let me just attend to that quickly. Okay, I have put the meeting link on the chat for those who did not get the email. I don't know what is going on, but the meeting link does not change. We use the same link every week for the lessons. So welcome, Divani. So yes, I was saying we use the same link every week for the class. So the same link that you use to join today, you must use every week. I know that they also send out an email from the City and TAT email address with a meeting request for this class. So the link is also there. Okay, so today we will do interaction design, and then we will also just start with the basics of human-computer interaction. So welcome everyone. For those who are new, I would just like to go through a few house rules. So for our sessions, we ask that you please switch off your video, mute your microphone, and if you have a question, please raise your hand, or you can pop your question here in the chat. I've put the attendance register already in the chat, so you can please just click on that link and complete the attendance register. I will also ask you in the end to complete the evaluation form, but most importantly, we want you to be free to participate and know that this is a safe environment. We're all here to learn. For any technical issues, like for those who could not join the meeting for whatever reason, you can send them any technical queries to this email address. Then the Cape Town Tutorial Office will be able to assist you with any technical queries. This is INF 1520. So INF 1505, we completed the content last week. So later on in October, then we will do revision for INF 1505. But for today, we are doing INF 1520. So if you're not doing that module, it's fine. Okay, recordings. All of the sessions are recorded, and they are accessible on YouTube on this playlist. I always also put the playlist to recordings here on the chat. Okay, so basics of human-computer interaction, or HCI. So the outcomes of today's lesson, we want to be able to define what is human-computer interaction and be able to define the important concepts related to human-computer interaction. Also to understand the current context of HCIs. Where does it fit in everyday life? We also want to be able to describe the different styles of human-computer interaction and be able to compare and contrast the different HCI styles. So in your study guide, there is a long section about the history of computing. I am not going to go through that, but it is important that you understand the history of computing for context, and also as you will be preparing for exams, you need to understand the historical content from the early computers until modern day computers. So that is for your own reading that you can do in your own time. Okay. So what is HCI? So human-computer interaction is the study of interaction between human beings and computers. So throughout this module, you will see that computer users is the term that is used for to refer to human beings in the context of HCI. So the interaction between human beings and computers is achieved via an interface. An interface is what the user sees on the screen in order to use the computer, be it on your laptop, you have an interface. Like now, we are on Microsoft Teams. We are using the Microsoft Teams interface to interact. You can see the interface has got different icons and buttons that you can use to access the chat, or to raise your hand, or to send a reaction, switch on your cameras, and so forth. So that is an example of an interface. So with any computer that we work with nowadays, there is always an interface. So this whole module is about how people interact with computers and other digital technologies. So this involves studying and improving the factors that influence computer use. Because as we know, technology is always evolving and getting better and better, but we also need to keep the human factor in mind. That is why we have to study this human-computer interaction. So human-computer interaction comes from a combination of different fields. It is not only computer related or IT related. So it stems from fields like psychology, engineering, design, sociology, computer science, and language. So all of those factors are combined together in this study of human-computer interaction. So just a quick summary about the early computers and modern computers. This is just a summary that will help you to understand. So if you look on the slide, I have got on the left-hand side a characteristic that differentiates early computers and modern computers. So the first one is size. So computers in the olden days were big. They were large and bulky, often filling entire rooms. You have probably heard about the mainframe computer. So those are the early computers, and their size was large and bulky. But in modern computers that we use today, they are much smaller and much more portable. For example, the laptops that we use, tablets and smartphones. So that is how you can compare them in terms of size. Then we also have processing power. The early computers had limited processing power with lower processors, less memory, and smaller storage capacity. So nowadays, the computers we are using today are far more powerful. They have faster processors and more memory and larger storage capacity. So if you have read the history of computers, when they talk about the mainframes, the processing power, it was very slow. Like they would maybe take a day to print a file or something like that. But today, with just a click of a button, you are able to do many actions in the computer. So that is how you can compare in terms of processing speed. Then we have user interface. So olden day computers, they relied on physical interfaces like punch cards and switches and command lines. I don't even know what a punch card looks like, but in the olden days, computers used punch cards and switches. But today, modern computers use graphical user interfaces, or GUI for short, which allows the users to interact with software using input devices. So a graphical interface, it's the interface that we use, which has got menus and buttons that you can just click on to do an action instead of writing a command. That is the difference between graphical user interface and a command line that was used in the olden days. In terms of connectivity, early computers were largely standalone with limited networking capability. But nowadays, computers are highly interconnected with the internet and other communication technologies. So that is why we are able to do online classes, because computers are highly interconnected and we can do everything over the internet. So that is how you are able to study online and do distance learning. In terms of cost, early computers were very expensive, often costing millions of dollars, and only a selected few people could afford to have a computer back then. But nowadays, computers are much more affordable, and there is a wide range of options available to suit different budgets, and also depending on what you want to use the computer for. But there is a wide range to choose from. So can you guys name a few examples of HCIs in the modern world? Any example you can think of? Just based on this definition of what human-computer interaction is, we said it is the study of interaction between human beings and computers, and this interaction is achieved via an interface. So if you just think about that, any interface that you interact with, what are some of those interfaces in our everyday lives? So I can give you an example. Mobile apps that we use every day on our smartphones. That is an example of an HCI. Any other examples? So mobile apps are is a form of HCI because you use mobile app to do something. So you can use it for communication like WhatsApp, or you can use it for banking, or for games or whatever. There are so many apps for different things, but that is an example of HCI. Kumuto says biometrics. Biometrics, yes, it is also an example of HCI, because when the user is scanning their fingerprint or scanning their eye, that interaction is sending a message to the computer to do something. So let's say for access control, when you scan your fingerprint, then you are sending an instruction to the computer, and it checks that you are a valid user with authorized to have access, then it gives you access. So thank you for that, Kumuto. And smartwatches. Yes, smartwatches are a good example also of HCIs. So you understand the concept. So we have many other types of examples of HCI, like ATMs. We use ATMs all the time. Even a person who cannot read can be able to use the ATM. So when you go to the ATM, you would not think that this is a human computer interface, because we are just used to it. You go to the ATM, you read the instruction on screen, and you do what you need to do. But that interface is a way for the user to interact with the banking system. So if you think carefully of how the ATM works, So you get there, it will have a message displayed or whatever. Then you insert your card, it asks you for your PIN. Then it shows you different transactions that you can use, and you must select what transaction you want to do. Maybe you want to withdraw some cash. You select that option, and then you can select the amount you want to withdraw or enter your own amounts that you want to withdraw. So all of that is logic that is built in to the banking system, so that when a user interacts with the ATM through that interface, then the system knows what to do next. So that is how HCI works. Then we also have things like social media, Facebook, Instagram, all of those is HCIs. Video games, yes. Virtual assistants like Siri, those are also HCIs. Wearable technology, hearing aid is an example of a wearable technology. So yes, hearing aid is also an example, same as smartwatches and other types of wearable devices as well. E-commerce, we spoke a lot about e-commerce in our INF1505 sessions. So e-commerce is basically the buying of goods over the internet. So these days we can do e-commerce from anywhere. As long as you have your smartphone with you, you can be able to order groceries from the different apps, or order food in, whatever you want to do, or buy clothing from all the different apps. Like the most grocery apps that are currently used in South Africa, like Checker 6060. We also have Uber delivery or Uber food also. So all of those are examples of e-commerce. Do you guys have any questions on this? Okay, so I'm just trying to give you a quick overview of the module so that when we get to interaction design, you will understand what it is about. So, principles of human-computer interaction. These are just the principles that you need to understand. So we have different principles like usability, ergonomics, human factors. Okay, let me just mute this person because there's noise. User experience, how the user will interact with the system. Input devices, how the user will give the computer instruction. So input devices are things like mouse, keyboard. Those those are input devices. Output devices, things like your monitor, speakers for sound, printer, those are output devices. Then we have the graphical user interface, which I explained earlier. So the graphical user interface, it is like the main component of HCI because it is what enables the user to be able to interact with the computer. Then we have language processing, which helps the computer and the user to understand each other. So when we are designing interfaces, we need to design interfaces that are easy to understand so that when a user is selecting an option, then the computer will be able to understand what it must do, especially for things like voice interfaces where the user gives instruction using voice. Then that is where language processing comes in so that the system is trained to understand natural language. In one of the chapters in INF1505, we talked about natural language processing and machine learning. So those concepts are related even when we are talking about HCI. So all the things that you are learning, they are related. You just need to be able to make sense of it and how it all relates to each other. So you can go and read the principles of HCI in your study guide. I'm not going to go into detail. You just need to know what usability is, what all of these other terms are, and be able to understand it, to explain it in your own words. That is what you need to know for each of those. Then I want us to look at the different styles of HCI. So there are different types for human-computer interaction. Command line interface. You have probably heard of this before. So command line refers to an interface where you have to type in an instruction. So this is mostly used in programming languages where you have to give the program an instruction, but you have to write it in code. So that is what command line interface is. Then we have mobile interfaces, which is the touch screen that is used in tablets, in smartphones, smartwatches. That is a touch screen interface. These days, we also have kitchen appliances with a touch screen. So that is also an HCI. We also have web-based interfaces. Web-based, I think that is easy to understand. Web-based interfaces are websites that we access on the internet, and everything that is web-based, like blogs, social media, all of those things. Speech or voice interfaces. These are interfaces where a user speaks to give a command to the interface. So, for example, virtual assistants like Siri or Google Assistant, where you can give a voice command. That is what they're talking about here for speech interface. Then the graphical user interface is the one that I spoke about earlier, which provides menus and icons and buttons for the user to interact with the computer. Multimedia interfaces. So multimedia involves graphics and video interfaces. Then we also have augmented reality interfaces. We talked about this last week in emerging trends. So this is part of the emerging trends, virtual reality interfaces. That is an example of HCI. Do you guys have any questions up to here? If no questions, we'll just go through this in detail. So command line displays a prompt and the user types a command on the keyboard and executes the command. So the computer executes a command providing textual output. So if you are doing programming or you've ever seen it, any type of programming language, mostly you will write a command and then the computer does something based on that command. So this is command line, but it is not user friendly because the person who is using this type of interface must have some knowledge of programming to be able to use this interface. So it is a type of HCI that was used in the olden days, but these days it's only used in programming or in system administration. So it is not an interface that is used by any normal user. Then we have graphical user interface, which is a visual interface which allows users to interact with the computer using icons, menus, and other graphical elements. So whenever you see a screen that it has menus, that is a graphical user interface. Apologies, my network dipped there. So I was explaining about graphical user interfaces. So these type of interfaces are user-friendly and intuitive, meaning that it guides the user on what to do. So if you hover your mouse on top of an icon, it tells you what that icon does. For example, now on Teams, if I hover above the hand, it says raise your hand. So it has got screen tips to show the user what icon does. the graphical interface work. It is commonly used in desktop and mobile operating systems. If you are using a Windows device or an Apple device or Android, you will see that all of them are using a graphical user interface. It can be manipulated using a mouse and often to an extent using a keyboard as well. So that is what a graphical user interface is. Then we have mobile interface, which is designed for handheld devices such as cell phones, tablets, devices that are intended for use on the move. Those are the type of devices that are using mobile interfaces. It uses a touch-sensitive screen to enable user interaction. So every time you're using your smartphone, you must just remember that this is a mobile interface. Anything that has got a touch screen is a mobile interface. So smartphones, tablets, and other mobile devices, these days they're using touch screens. Then we also have voice interface or speech interfaces, which allows users to interact with the computers using spoken commands. These ones are have the capacity to interpret and language. This is only used in systems that provide specific information. For perform a specific transaction, like buying a movie ticket. These days, using this type of interface, I think, to reduce the load on the call center agents. So the user is able to the system to say what they want to do, and based on that, then they are directed to the relevant department. So voice interfaces are becoming increasingly popular with the rise of virtual assistants like Siri, Alexa, and Google Assistant. But with those, I think you need to train it so that it can get to a point where it understands your accent, because the way that we speak in South Africa is different from how the Americans and the Europeans speak. So you'll find that most of the time when you are using Google Assistant maybe to ask something, then it doesn't understand what you are saying. So that is the downside of voice interfaces, but they are very useful for people who have visual impairment. Then they can use voice interfaces to interact with the computer. Okay, can you guys name a few more interface types in human interaction? Okay, I'll just give you a summary. So this is a summary of the different interface types. You should be able to differentiate between the interface types based on appearance, behavior, and design aims. That when we are designing this type of interfaces, what must be taken into account. So for command line interface, we said that it is text-based. So the appearance is usually in black and white. Behavior for command line is that it requires users to type commands in a specific syntax, meaning that the user must have knowledge of that programming language or whatever it is in order to be able to use that command line interface. So it is designed for efficiency and for advanced users. It requires technical knowledge and it is less user friendly. It is actually, compare that to the graphical user interface, the GUI. Its appearance is that it uses visual elements, icons, menus, and windows. What we are using now in our computers these days, you have if you have a Windows operating system, or same with Android. So the appearance is more visually appealing, and then the behavior of the graphical user interfaces. Users interact with the interface by using a mouse or a touchpad or the touch screen that we spoke about now. And it is designed to be intuitive and user-friendly with a focus on simplicity and ease of use. So this is why you can find that young do stuff on the smartphone because of the graphical user interface. They can just look at the icon or the picture and know that if I click here, then this is what it does. So it also have the mobile interface type, which is a touch screen. Users interact with the interface by using finger gestures. So you can just imagine how you use your smartphone or a tablet. That is a mobile interface. And it is designed for portability and ease of use on the go. Voice interfaces, there are no visual elements. So users interact using spoken commands. It also uses speech recognition technology to interpret user input. And it is designed to be hands-free and convenient with a focus on accessibility and ease of use for people with disability. So that is where this voice interface is mostly used. Comments or questions? You guys are very quiet today. We will go to our next topic, interaction design. That one is part of your assessment 4. This is lesson 4 in your study guide. So I'm just going to share that one. Okay, it is loading. Okay, so interaction design. This is lesson study guide. To know from this to be able to describe the process of designing a usable system and discuss interaction types and also discuss interface evaluation. So at the end, we can also talk about any questions that you have regarding the assessment that is coming up. I think it is due next week on the 9th of September. So we said human-computer interaction is the study of interaction between this interaction occurs via an interface. So it is achieved via an interface. It is all about how people interact with computers and other digital technologies. So if you just think about it on a daily basis, how much you are interacting with computers or any digital technology, it is a lot, and it has become just a part of everyday life that we don't even think about it. But I think this module uh, adding, it is not just theory, it is actually things that we interact with on a daily basis. So I gave an example of the smartphone that we use every day and the ATM example. So when you're using those things, just think, what kind of interface am I using here? And how is it working? So this field of HCI is focused on studying and improving the factors that influence computer use. Designing usable systems that will be easy for users, but also at the same time be efficient and do what they're supposed to do. So it is a structured process which involves understanding users and their needs and the context of use in order to create the right interfaces and systems that are efficient, effective, and most importantly, user-friendly. So interaction design is not a once-off process. It is an iterative process, meaning that it is a repeated process which involves ongoing user feedback and refinement. It is also crucial to involve users throughout the design process to create systems that meet their needs and expectations. So that is why there's always often a back and forth between users and the design team to make sure that the interface or the system that's being designed meets the user requirements. So that is what interaction design is. Then we have a general flow of the design process. So this is basically the steps that are followed in interaction design. So in order to design an interface, we must understand what the user wants or what they need. That is the first step, stage one. Then the next step is to analyze those user needs. Then after you analyze the need, then you design the interface. So in analyzing the need, maybe you may find that the users require an interface that will display timetable information. For example, now we are going into exam time. Maybe UNISA wants to have a new interface to show exam timetables. It must be an interface that is mobile friendly and also viewable on the website. And maybe it must be a data-free interface so that students can be able to access it without using data. So all of that is part of the analysis stage. Then in the design stage, the designer, usually there is a user experience designer in a project who will come up with the design based on the requirement. So usually they need to make sure that the interface is designed to meet the main requirement. So if it is an interface to display timetable information, there is no need to fill the screen with many unnecessary things that will distract the user. So that is part of the design to make sure that the requirements are met and that the interface that is being designed is easy to use and it is easy to find the stuff that the user wants to do. So that is interface design. Then we have a prototype stage where the designers can build a model to show what the actual interface will look like. So it is not a interface, but just a model. They can use mock-up screens just to show what the interface will look like to the user before they start building the actual interface. Then there is implement and deploy. This is where the interface is built by whatever technology that has been selected, or if it is being developed from scratch, that happens in the stage 5. Once the development is done, it is then tested and then it can be released to the users. So that is the generic flow of the interaction design process. So if you look a bit deeper on the first step, where we said we identify the user's needs and requirements, so we can also design alternative design according to those requirements so that the users have options. They can choose which design they want to go with, and then build interactive versions of the prototype of those designs, and then evaluate the user experience with the product. That is part of the design process. Then design techniques that are followed, prototypes. So it is a way to provide to test out different design ideas. That is what a prototype is. And it acts as a communication medium within the design team. And members can test their different ideas on the prototypes, and the team can discuss these ideas. So the concept of prototype is not only used for designing interfaces, it is used in other industries as well, in engineering, in uh, manufacturing, in building, wherever there is something that must be built. Usually they create a prototype first of what it would look like. I'm sure you have seen this even in the building industry, where they create a model of the house or a model of the estate, where customers can be able to see what the final product will look like. So that is a prototype. And then the users can respond to the prototype by explaining what it address or it doesn't address, what they need on the prototype, or what they want to add, what they want to remove. So this process helps designers to improve their designs based on the prototypes, and then they can choose which design they are going to go with. So the concept of prototypes is important that you understand it even for your assessment. Then we have got different types of prototypes, low fidelity and high fidelity prototype. They like to ask a question about this. So low fidelity prototypes are cheap mock-up of a system. It can be created just using um, drawing or um, static images. That is a cheap mock-up, and it does not use the material that the final product will be built of. And it may even look a lot like the intended system. So for example, sketching using storyboards, index card, and Wizard of Oz. Oz, I don't know what that is, but that explains the idea of a low fidelity prototype. If you can just think of storyboards, it is not an actual system, but by looking at the storyboard, the user can understand what the final product will look like. Then we also have high fidelity prototypes, which resemble the final system and use the same material. So it is similar to the final product, but this one will require software tools and programming skills before the prototype can be ready. And it can gradually develop into the final product. So it requires time and resources. So this is called evolutionary prototyping, and it can be a time-consuming and an expensive process to develop this type of prototype. So this type of prototype, high fidelity prototypes is used in complex engineering mostly. So for interaction design, we normally use low fidelity prototypes. Are there any comments or questions? I see some people have left the call. Or is there any specific thing that you want me to cover? Okay. So when we go to the next interaction design technique, this is called conceptual design. So conceptual involves turning the user's needs and requirements into a conceptual design. It is not a description of the interface, but it gives an idea of what the user can do with a system and what concepts they need to be familiar with in order to use it. Principles to follow when doing a conceptual design. For example, as a designer, you need to keep an open mind, but always think of the users and their context. What are they going to use this interface for? So it's always important to discuss ideas with all the stakeholders that are involved, and as often as possible, so that you keep the users involved throughout the process. For conceptual design, use low fidelity prototyping to get quick feedback. So this is a technique that is normally used. So with low fidelity prototyping, it is not going to take long to have the prototype ready, and you can get feedback from the users quickly. And continue doing this process over and over, because it is an iterative process, until you reach an agreement on which design must be developed. So important factors in conceptual design are interface metaphors and interface types. So we've already talked about interface types, but interface metaphors provide a structure that is similar to some aspects of a familiar entity, but that has also its own behavior and property. Joe is asking which chapter is this? This is lesson 4 from your INF1520. Okay. So interface metaphors are used to explain something that is hard to grasp by comparing it to something that is familiar and easy to grasp. For example, if you're trying to explain to a user what the Windows desktop is, so you can say the computer screen is like a desktop meaning a desk, and the folders and applications are like things that we could have on top of a desk in real life. So I don't know if that makes sense. If you are trying to explain to the user the Windows desktop, if you are on your laptop and you go on the Windows desktop, you can see that there are folders, applications. So to explain to a user who is not familiar with that concept, you can use a metaphor to say that the desktop is like a physical desk, and the folders and the applications are like things that we can put on the desk. Maybe you have your filing on the desk, and you have stationery, and you have different things that you can put on the desk. So that is how interface metaphors are used. Interface types. So designers should not be influenced by having a specific predetermined interface type. So before going into a design session, the designer must go in open-minded and listen to the needs of the user. So having a specific interface type in mind may disable the design process, and potentially good solutions may be overlooked. So that is why we must have an open mind when designing interfaces. Okay, the interface types I've already spoken about, the graphical user interface. I'm not going to repeat that again. Then advantages of graphical user interface. Visibility. I'm sure we can all agree to that the graphical user interface makes it easy for things to be visible, because it has got color, it has got icons and pictures. So it is good visibility. Cross-cultural communication. You don't need to understand or be able to read. You can just look at the icon and know what you can do, you need to do. It has got impact and animation. However, as with anything, there are disadvantages of or weaknesses of the graphical user interface. It can have clutter. If it is designed poorly, the screen can be cluttered, which can be confusing to users. Ambiguity, meaning that the menus or icons that are shown on the interface don't have a clear meaning. Imprecision and slow speed. So those are the disadvantages of graphical user interface. Okay, I want us to talk about the assignment. So interface evaluation is part of your last assessment. What you need to know here is that it involves gathering data about the usability of a design or a product by a specified group of users for a particular activity within a specific environment. That is why interface evaluation is done. So when evaluation is used, we must remember the characteristics of the users. Who are the users that are going to use this interface? Is it going to be used by young children or by elderly people? The type of activities that they will be doing on the interface. Are they going to be playing games, or is this an interface for them to learn? Is it an interface to access a service, for example? And the environment of the study must be taken into account, and the nature of the artifact being used. So there is formative evaluation and summative evaluation that is used for interface evaluation. So formative is used during the design process and summative at the end of the design process. That is the main difference is there. And formative evaluation is used to identify difficulties that arise, while summative is used to make the final judgment. So summative evaluation happens at the end, formative happens during the design process. So once you understand that, you can be able to differentiate between the two. Then with formative evaluation, there is exploratory or general testing, but for summative, one or two major issues are tested, meaning that they only do specific testing for summative evaluation. How to evaluate interfaces? This can be done in labs or in real-life environment where the system will be used. For example, if it is a system that is going to be used by elderly people in an old age home, so the evaluation will happen in that environment so that we can get accurate results. If it is an interface that is going to be used by preschool children, then the evaluation must happen in that environment. So evaluation methods and the setting of the evaluation are closely linked together. Then there are three main evaluation approaches: usability testing, analytical evaluation, and field studies. You can go and read those in detail as you prepare for your assessment. But I'll just give you a quick summary. This looks very small. If you can't see, you can just zoom on your side, but I will also share the slides at the end. So interface evaluation techniques. So we have 4 types. It's the scenario-based, query techniques, heuristics, and cooperative evaluation techniques. How you compare this is ease of use. Scenario-based is easy to use, but query techniques require considerable amount of skill, and the heuristics evaluation also require amount of skill. However, cooperative evaluation is simple to use. So based on this, you can decide which evaluation technique must be used for interface evaluation. So for example, the scenario-based, users provide feedback on the scenario based on tasks and provide feedback about the use of when they performing the task. If it is easy to do the task on that interface or not. So let's say with an interface for the elderly people, maybe to order medicine, as an example. As a designer, you can ask them to evaluate the interface and provide feedback on how their experience was in using that interface to perform the critical tasks that they need to perform on the interface. So this type of evaluation must be carried out in the user's working environment. So where the interface will be used, whether it is in a corporate organization or in retail or wherever, and in schools, that is where the evaluation must take place. And the users help with that type of evaluation. Whereas with others, like heuristics, users are not involved in the testing, but with query techniques, users are contacted, but it is done away from the working environment. So in this case, they use things like questionnaires and interviews to ask questions using the query technique. The cooperative evaluation technique, this is where a researcher will sit with the user and work through the tasks in the system, and they can observe how the user interacts with the interface. And this is done in the user's environment. Okay, I will stop there for now, and then we can just look at a few review questions. Then we talk about assessment if you guys have any questions. Okay. So the first question, web-based interfaces are located on A, websites, B, web browsers, or C, servers. You just choose the correct answer and you put it here in the chat. Which option do you think is the correct answer? Thank you, Komoto. So you are saying web-based interfaces are located on web browsers. Remember, a web browser is a tool that we use to access things on the internet. So anything on the web, we use a web browser. So if you just think about Google Chrome, or if you use Microsoft Edge, you go and you type in a web address. Maybe you want to access a specific website. Then you use the web browser to access the website. So Joe is saying option C, servers. Web-based interfaces are located on servers on web browsers. I don't have the correct answer. You guys must come up with the answer yourselves. So you can go and look that up. It is there in your study guide, just to confirm whether the answer is web browsers or servers. So I will leave that up to you. Then question 2, the term graphical user interface refers to pictures and tables in the computer, interactive system that uses pictures to communicate, or system that draws and uses pictures. We spoke about graphical user interface a lot today. You can just select the correct answer there. Okay, Komodo says option B, graphical user interface refers to interactive system that uses pictures to communicate. Yeah, that is the correct answer because we did say that it uses icons and menus and graphics to show the options for users. So yes, option B is the correct answer there. The next one, take the form of a simple paper-based storyboard of the interface screen and represent a design. Is it a mixed interface, an initial design, or prototype? Which one is the correct answer? This is related to interface design. Thank you, Kumutso. The other guys, what do you think? Okay, Kumutso, you're the only one that's answering, but yeah, you are correct. A prototype is the correct answer. The prototype takes the form of a simple paper-based storyboard of the interface screen and represent a design. So we said that a prototype is just a way to test out design ideas. So a prototype is not the real interface that will be used in the end. It is just a mock-up. So in this case of storyboard are a cheap mock-up of the system, and they actually don't use the final material that will be used in the interface. So here when they're saying a paper-based storyboard, yes, it fits the description of a prototype. Next one, which of the following is not a low fidelity prototype? Storyboard, Wizard of Oz, or Visual Basic? We spoke about low fidelity prototypes and high fidelity prototypes. So which of these is not a low fidelity prototype? Joe says C, Visual Basic. Yes, because we said low fidelity prototypes are cheap mock-ups of the system, but high fidelity prototypes require software tools, programming skills. So Visual Basic is a high fidelity prototype, not low fidelity. Thank you for that one. And that is all the practice questions I have. But if you guys need assistance, I am available to help you with the assignment if you need help with the assignment or help with any of your first year information systems modules or computer science modules. You can just send me an email, then I will be able to assist you one-on-one. But before we go, I just wanted to ask if you guys are happy with the assessment 4. Do you have any questions regarding that assessment? As I understand it, it covers lesson 4 and 5. Oh, you have not attempted it yet. 4 and 5 only. That is what it says on the tutorial, unless the lecturer has posted an update on the module site. Okay. So since it is the last one, you must just make sure that you prepare the lessons that were not covered, the previous lessons. So according to your tutorial letter, it says 4 and 5, lesson 4 and 5. Okay, so maybe it has not opened yet. Then it gives you more time to prepare. So what I am telling you is what I'm getting on the tutorial letter. So assessment 4 is a multiple choice quiz and covers lesson 4 and 5. I'm posting the screenshot here in the chat, and it also shows you the weight of the assessment in your final mark for the module. So if you did not do well in your previous assignments, then you must just make sure that you do your best in this assessment, because all of the assessments contribute towards your final mark. And yeah, while you are preparing for the assessment, you must also think about the exam that is coming soon. We are already in September. So each assignment contributes towards your final mark. So it's better to make sure that you get good marks in the assignments, so that when you go into the exam, you are already in good standing. Okay, So we will stop here for today. I'm just going to post the evaluation form. Then you guys can please complete. Then next week we will do the other topics for INF1520. But like I said, I'm also available for the computer science modules and visual programming as well, if you are doing those modules. Okay, I've posted the evaluation form here. You guys can click on the evaluation form and complete the form where it asks you to select a facilitator. Then you select my name, Tondani Moketsi, and then you complete the form. It is just for us to know how to improve our sessions. Okay. Does anyone have a question?